Good morning, students. Today we come to the last part of this essay, Mackery in Hertfordshire. In the first part, we talked about the nature of these two people. One is Charles Lamb and the other one is Bridget, who is really his sister Mary Lamb, presented as the housekeeper in this essay. In the first part, we understood the strong bond between these two people, and along with that, he talked about the differences in their nature, differences in their temperament, differences in their literary taste. And most of the time, he focused on the nature of Bridget and tried to present that she was the only one who is closest to his heart. She was the only one who was there to share all those difficult times in their lives. And at the last part of the previous lecture, we were talking about their visit to this Mackery in Hertfordshire. That was actually their mother's place. They used to spend their vacations there. Now, after around 40 years, they are revisiting this place. And through the eyes of Charles Lamb, we see the excitement shown by Bridget. She is so excited. The paragraph ends like this. She shows such a breathless impatience of recognition, which was more pardonable, perhaps, than decorous at the age of 50 odd. But Bridget, in some things, is behind her ears. So she was so excited that she behaved like a child. And he says that he can pardon that. It is completely unsuitable for a 50-year-old maid, but I will pardon her because it is after 40 years and I know her nature. There ended our previous lecture. Today we start with the last paragraph where they enter this house. They are entering this house. So please remember, they are visiting this place after 40 years and they are now completely strangers and they have no idea who all are residing in this house. Please imagine that situation. You are visiting a place after around 20 years and you don't know anyone there, and how awkward it feels. He says that the only difficulty, as I said earlier, the only difficulty he faced on reaching Mackery was how to enter into this house and how to meet all those people residing there. He felt so awkward. By nature, he was an introvert, and you know an introvert. Actually, I am an introvert. I can't even imagine that situation where I will go to a place where I will see all those strangers and how I will introduce myself and what to talk, how to begin a conversation. Being an introvert, I know the difficulty. Maybe you know. So, entering the house seemed so difficult for Charles Lamb. He felt so shy of meeting strangers, meeting all those relations whom he has not met for a long time, that is around 40 years. He doesn't know whether they have lived through all these years. All these relations are still there. He has this doubt. But Bridget had not felt any kind of difficulty in entering the house. It is said that, I quote from the essay, "Love, stronger than scruple, winged my cousin in without me." For her, what dominated was love. Love which was stronger than scruple, doubt. While doubt shyness dominated in the mind of Charles Lamb. It was love which dominated the mind of Bridget. She ran. She swiftly went into the house. Love, stronger than scruple, winged in cousin without me. She was winging in. She was running in. She swiftly, quickly entered into the house, and within a minute, she came up with a creature. She came up with another human being that might have sat to a sculptor for the image of welcome. That means she came out with a young woman who had a warm, welcoming expression in her face. She was, from the face itself, we understand that the one who came from that house to welcome us. She was so pleasant. So, Bridget runs into the house and she comes back with a young woman who has this pleasant face, and it felt so soothing. He had all these doubts. But this welcoming face soothed his anxieties of entering into a house after 40 years. And then there is this description of this young woman who comes from this house, who has this pleasant face. He says that she was the youngest of the Gladmans by marriage with a Bruton, and had become mistress of this old mansion. So she is now the mistress of this old mansion. She was actually from the Gladman family, and she was married to this Bruton family. As I said earlier, most of the time this mansion was inherited by families, all these Bruton family and Gladman family. So she was from Gladman family and married to Bruton family, and she was a comely brood. Comely brood is a welcoming person, as I said earlier, a person with pleasant face, a person with a kind of a warm expression, welcoming expression in her face. So she comes from this house. So she is compared to a sculptor. She looks like an image of welcome. Even from the first view itself, she looked like an image of welcome. She was a comely brood. And then he talks about a short description of their lineage. He says that 6 of them, females, were noted as the handsomest young women in the country. But this adopted Bruton in my mind was better than they all, more comely. So, all these young women from this family, from this Bruton family, who belong to Bruton family, they are very pleasant looking, handsomest, beautiful young girls. But I should say, Charles Lamb says that, I should say that of all them, this adopted Bruton, this girl who was married to Bruton family, looked more comely, more welcoming. She was more fair, beautiful. And he continues, she was born too late to have remembered me. She just recollected in early life to have had her cousin Bridget once pointed out to her climbing a stile. And then he says that he had not met her before. She came lately to this house, and she started recollecting the time of their first visit to this place. She talks about a certain incident she remembers, that is, this Bridget climbing a stile, a fence. So from the first moment itself, they started recollecting all those memories of the past, all those pleasant memories of the past. And she expressed such genuine pleasure at the visit of these distant relations. As I said earlier, she has not met these people earlier, but she showed such genuine pleasure, and it was so soothing for Charles Lamb, who had all these anxieties, all these doubts of how to enter this house. And he continues, please mark this lines. Usually it is asked for your annotations. Those slender ties that proselyte as gossamer in the rending atmosphere of a metropolis bind faster as we found it in hearty, homely, loving Hertfordshire. He says that all those ties, all those relations which look so slender, which look so delicate, so fragile, like a gossamer. Gossamer is a spider web. So all those slender ties, all those fragile relations, just like a spider web, which would have broken in the rending atmosphere of a metropolis, all those alienating atmosphere of a city. He says that all these cities, though he belonged to city, though he had this love for the city, he talks about the alienating atmosphere of the city. He says that the alienating atmosphere of the city tends to keep apart all those relations instead of bringing them together. The idea is that the relations in the big city is more fragile. They don't have this natural affections towards each other. While he says that in the countryside, in villages, family relationships remain intact. It is very strong. So all those slender ties, which is fragile like a spider web in the atmosphere of a city, it bind faster. Where? It bind faster in hearty, homely, loving Hertfordshire. He says that within 5 minutes of their entry into their house, we were thoroughly acquainted as if we had been born and bred up together, were familiar even to the calling each other by our Christian names. We became so familiar with each other, we became so friendly with each other, we began calling one another by their Christian names. Usually, when it is something like a formal relationship, they call each other, they address each other with their surnames. But here, within 5 minutes, they started calling each other their Christian names. All those names where all those near relations will call each other. And he compares the relationship, the bond that have developed between Bridget and this cousin who comes out of this house. To have seen Bridget and her, it was like the meeting of two scriptural cousins. So who are these scriptural cousins? Bridget and this girl, this young woman who came out from this house, they looked like scriptural cousins. So the scriptural cousins are the cousins you see in Bible. Reference here is to Virgin Mary, that is mother of Jesus Christ, and Elizabeth. who is the mother of John the Baptist. Bridget and this cousin, whom she had met, became so familiar with each other that they are compared to these Mary and Elizabeth. They are the scriptural cousins. And he continues, there was a grace and dignity, an amplitude of form and stature answering to her mind in this farmer's wife, which would have shined in a palace, or so we thought it. Though this girl was a farmer's wife, she showed the characteristics, all those shining characteristics of a queen. She had this grace, she had this dignity, and this amplitude of form and stature. She looked so tall. She had this grace, elegance, and which would have shone even in a palace. We can't say that she is a wife of a farmer. She looked like a queen from her behavior. And then there is this reference of BF. BF is the one who accompanied Charles Lamb and Bridget to this house. BF is actually Baron Field. He is an English barrister who later became the judge of a Supreme Court at Sydney. And later he became the Chief Justice at Gibraltar. So here the reference is BF. BF is Baron Field. So he says that BF will not so soon forget that meeting, if per adventure he shall read this on the far distant shores where the kangaroo homes. So kangaroos, they are found in Australia. This Baron Field was going to Australia. He was taking charge in Australia as a judge in Supreme Court. So he says that his point is that even if he goes to Australia where this kangaroo haunts, even he will remember these cordial people, these graceful people. He will not ever forget in his life such cordial welcome he had from this house. So he's trying to prove the point that if he can't forget, if Baron Field, a friend of ours, can't forget this meeting, how can we? It will be etched in our memories till the end of our lives. We never expected such hearty welcome from these strangers from this house they were visiting around after 40 years. And he continues, a sumptuous meal was prepared for these guests. The fatted calf was made ready, or rather was already so, as if in anticipation of our coming. It was already ready, as if they were expecting us. And we had this appropriate glass of native wine. Never let me forget what honest pride this hospitable cousin made us proceed to Wheat Hampstead to introduce us to her mother and sister Gladmans. After the meal, she took us to her own home and introduced us to her mother, her sisters, who lived in Wheat Hampstead. And here there is also another reference, the reference of fatted calf. Fatted calf was made ready. The reference here is to the story, as you know, if you have read Bible, it is the reference to the story of Prodigal Son, who on his return after all his wanderings, who went against the wish of his father, who left his own house, who disobeyed his father and who left his own house. And one day, after all those going through all those difficult times, he comes back home. And he thinks that he will get a bad treatment from his father because he had disobeyed his father and had left his home. But to his surprise, he gets a hospitable treatment from his father. And when this father saw his son returning, he asked his servants to kill one of his best calf, and he throws out a party. This fattened calf was slaughtered, and great party was thrown in celebration of the return of this prodigal son. So this story is linked to this meal. So here the idea is that they also left this place. They also broke this chain of relationship with Hertfordshire and they settled in city. But even then, when they returned, they got such welcome. Here he compares it to the return of prodigal son. He continues, this girl introduces both of them to her mother and her sisters. And then came many recollections of the past. Many recollections of the past. It is almost like a flood. All those 1,000 half obliterated recollections, he says. All those 1,000 recollections, but it is half obliterated, half forgotten. It is after 40 years, it is half forgotten, half in their memory, and it comes out in the form of a flood when these girls, when these young women talk to each other. All these recollections come to them in the form of a flood. They start talking about all those past memories, past things, past people. And both these young men, Charles Lamb and B.F. Barrenfield, they were simply surprised by seeing the non-stop conversation these women had, especially Bridget's ceaseless talk about the past. It was all those old, effaced images. He quotes, old, effaced images of more than half forgotten names, circumstances still crowding back upon her. So all those images, which is already half forgotten, which started crowding upon her, back upon her, and she relentlessly, ceaselessly talk about those incidents. It is like he compares that to a certain image. He says that it looks like all those words written in lemon come out upon exposure to a friendly warmth. So there is something like a scientific experiment. We as children have done that. I hope you also have done that. That is, you write something on a paper with a lemon, with a juice of a lemon, and it will be completely invisible. But if these words are exposed to a heat, if you show it to direct sunlight, they become clearly visible in something like a brownish black color. Hope you have done that. If you haven't done that, please do that experiment. You write something with the juice of lemon in a paper and show it directly to the sunlight and it will clearly appear. It becomes visible. So the comparison is Like when there was this friendly acquaintance, friendly talk with these two, between these two cousins, it looked like all those half forgotten memories started crowding upon her, started becoming visible to her with those friendly warmth. And here he almost ends this essay. He talks about he at the in the last lines he goes back to his childhood. He says that when I forget all this, then may my country cousins forget me, and Bridget no more remember that in the days of weakling infancy I was her tender charge, as I have been her care in foolish manhood since, in those pretty pastoral walks long ago about Mackery End in Hertfordshire. So the point is that Lamb will never forget this wonderful meeting. And if I forget, Bridget may not remember. That means the idea is he's bringing out all those negative, forgetting, may not remember, but bringing out all those negative statements, he's trying to bring out or trying to stress on the strong effect of their meeting. He's trying to say, with all those negative statements, he's trying to say that they will never forget this wonderful meeting ever in their life. He still remembers all those childhood activities, and he remembers Bridget Alia, was actually in charge of him during his childhood, that is, all those days of weakling infancy, and even now, even when he is passing through this foolish manhood, she is still in charge of him. And I will not forget all these events in my childhood. I will never forget all these events. As you know, when you study the biography of Charles Lamb and Bridget Alia, Mary Lamb, you will understand that these are the two people who lived only in their memories. They don't have anything bright to look forward to. Their whole life was immersed in all those great tragedies. They took pleasure in all those small things. They started appreciating the beauty of small things because life as a whole treated them very badly. Life treated them very badly. So they took pleasure in all those small moments, all those small beautiful moments. So imagine how positive these people are. They celebrated their bond between each other because that was the only thing they had in their entire life, the bond between brother and sister. He says that he will always remember all those pretty pastoral walks about Mackery in Hertfordshire. So those you must understand, these are the, when we consider all these things, these are very trivial things, just a walk, just some of the images from the past. These are trivial things to us, but for them, it is something which binds them together, keep them together, and this is how they celebrate their life together. Here, girls, I end this lecture on Mackery End. I'm sorry, there is a mistake in the title. It is Mackery. It was autocorrect. It is Mackery end. Here ends my lecture. Hope it is clear. Please go through the essay once more and listen to this lecture. In the next class, there will be an assignment. Like, you have to write an essay, a critical summary of this essay, Mackery end. So please prepare for that assignment, which will come in your next class. Thank you, girls. Have a nice day.